All right, so I'm gonna give a few minutes and wait for you guys to come on back. Come on back. Come back. Uh, while I get on to Clubhouse, trying to make sure we cover as much as we can. Peace, 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 fam. Peace. Much better. This is much better, right? Oh, y'all know I'm challenged, and of course I came out in the room I started in Clubhouse because I'm challenged. It is what it is. I might just have to start a whole new room. Oh, I know what I could do. All right, so y'all be able to get some people in here before we get started. We're gonna cover this trial. It's been something. Okay. All right. So have y'all been watching the trial? Today was day 1 of the Derek Chauvin trial. Peace, peace, family. This is going to be an interesting case. You are so right about that, because watching this evidence come in, it is not going to be anything like what people are expecting, right? And so a lot of people are like, this is open and shut. I got clips up all over the place. If you following me on Twitter, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. I've been posting little links here and there of different stuff I've been doing. Peace, Aaron, or Aaron. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. T Breeze, F Rich, Purple Pill, Mary Israel, Hey Rude, that's my son's middle name. Shock Rock King, Black, Peace family. Peace, my Clubhouse family. So my Clubhouse family, this is your girl Ike here. I am an attorney here in New York City. For those of you who don't know me and who are not following me, please, please follow me. I'm a legal informationalist. I'm waiting for Michelle Fields, who is also an attorney, to come join so she can give us her feedback too. Just come on, Clubhouse. No. Okay. So she can get her perspective and let you guys know what she thought as well. I hope that gas station witness didn't put the state off to him. And I'm sitting there going, why did they call her? Exactly for what? Right. So before we get into the witnesses, let's talk about the overview of where we are in this case. My clubhouse people, Michelle's gonna be coming too to help moderate in the clubhouse room so that we can get all this information out. So Derek Chauvin has been charged with, he's facing 3 counts. Let's be clear. And now, those of you who've been following me, I do not operate on emotion, right? I do not operate on emotion. So I can guarantee you that the shit I'm going to say today is going to make you mad. I don't care. I'm not here to placate your feelings. I am here to help you manage your expectations, right? So that you know exactly what to expect and you won't be disappointed if your expectations are too high or unrealistic, right? Okay, so today we have the opening statement. Did you notice that they put the black guy to do the opening? The black guy did the opening. I've been watching this here and there, watching jury selection. That was the first time I saw him. I'm not saying that he hasn't been around. I just have not seen him very much. And so he did the open, and I found that very interesting. So let's talk about his opening statement. So y'all tell me in the comments, y'all tell me, y'all open up, tell me in the chat, did y'all think that his opening statement was convincing? Did he sell it? Because, they say the opening statement is so important. It's the point where you have to tell your story. That's where you get to lay out your evidence in the case, and you get to sell the jury your theory of the case, right? I didn't think it was a good tactic. Purple pill, you thought it was good? You thought it was good? I didn't think it was good.
I didn't think it was good either. I thought it was very flat. I think he really, played on the emotions of the jurors. And I wasn't. I was just surprised how flat it was.
See, I thought the same thing. Now, oftentimes when you don't have facts on your side, you argue the law. You don't have the law on your side, argue the facts. And if you don't have either, pound the goddamn table, right? That's the saying. But sometimes prosecutors do a thing where when they don't have the evidence, or they think that the evidence is not that strong, they will try to sell a case on emotion, right? So they are appealing to your outrage. And when you watch this video, that you're going to be so outraged by what you see that you will vote guilty on that alone. That's a huge mistake. That's a huge mistake. It doesn't happen. It does not happen. And what did we see him do? He like tried to be the modern day Johnny Cocker, and he threw in a few sayings, right? So he was saying things like he was grinding and crushing him, right? Saying things like that. He had a couple of little rhyming things where he was saying he said something about he wasn't getting off of him. He didn't what did he say? To get up, to stand up, to sit up, to stand up, something like that. He kept saying. Even when EMS comes, he doesn't get up. He went through a lot of what you're going to hear in this evidence, in this case, right? He talked about that Derek Chauvin has a small badge with a large responsibility, with large accountability. He talked about a lot about police officers needing to show compassion and having the sanctity of life be paramount in their awareness. He talked about the oath that officers take, and that they're supposed to enforce it appropriately. They should never employ unnecessary force or violence. He banged on this a lot, the public trust that police officers have, the ethics, and that they're public servants and things of that nature. And then he went on to say how Derek Chauvin had violated all of that. All of that. He went on to say how they were going to be calling expert witnesses in the use of force. And this is where some of this is really going to hinge this case. They're going to call expert witnesses in the use of force. But one of the things that he said is that the standard for applying use of force is an objectively reasonable standard, right? It's an objectionable, everything is reasonable though. Reasonable doubt, was his actions reasonable? Everything comes to reasonable, and whether or not this makes sense. But it's going to be reasonable to a police officer. It's not going to be reasonable to the average person, right? Because we have to look at what Derek Chauvin was doing at the time. Was his actions as a police officer in that situation, under those circumstances, was that reasonable? Okay, so they're going to bring in witnesses that talk about you cannot use more force than is necessary. You can't use more restraint than is necessary. They're going to have a sergeant who's going to come in and talk about the use of force. He's an expert. And then they argued that there was no need for any force. Once George Floyd was on the ground at that point, then he was restrained. And so at that point, the prosecution argues Derek Chauvin didn't need to have his knee on his neck. Oh, here's one of the little quotes he said. When you're in custody, you're in the care, right? And so he's building this idea that when you're in police custody, you're in their care. They're supposed to be responsible for your well-being, for your welfare, right? And so he's selling this whole thing. The other thing that he did was, in a lot of the opening, he threw in a lot of emotionality. I might have made that word up, but I don't care, because I like you and I could do that, right? He threw in shit like, which I don't like. I don't like that. Don't play on my emotions, because the judge is going to give the jury an instruction that says you cannot use bias or sympathy or anything for or against anybody, either side, to determine this case. So I didn't like what he did. This is what he did. He's like, you see that little girl? There's a little girl right there. You're going to hear from her. I think they're going to call this little girl to come testify. She has on a blue shirt or a green shirt. You see the shirt, it says love on it. Like, motherfucker, what? Why are you talking about the girl's shirt? She was on her way. Listen, it goes, it's more. She was on her way to buy candy and snacks. Right. Again, that's all that has to do with is emotion. Emotion. Look what Derek Chauvin did in front of this little kid while she was just on her way to buy candy and snacks. He's such a horrible person. He's such a horrible person. But they don't really talk about the causation, right? So he talked about Derek Chauvin having 11 milligrams of fentanyl in his system. 11 milligrams, which the prosecution conceded could in fact cause the ordinary average person to overdose, right? Their argument is that George Floyd is not the average ordinary person because he has a history of fentanyl and methamphetamine use, meaning that he has built up a tolerance, right? And so what might kill you or I might just get him high, right? Might just get him the regular. I don't know how many people know addicts, but sometimes addicts don't get high to get high. They get high to be just normal. Then they gotta get high again to get high, right? Okay, yeah, maybe y'all don't know what I'm talking about, but so that was part of the prosecution's theory, right? Is that while he was using, or he was these items were found in his system, it wasn't enough to cause him to overdose, right? Now, Michelle, we want to talk about the defense, or you want to add something about the prosecution? Because I got notes for these. I thought it was really interesting that he really talked about this critical moment where he says, this is the point where George Floyd stopped breathing. And for 44 seconds after that moment, Derek Chauvin continued to have his knee on his neck. And I don't know if it's going to come down to those 44 seconds, as opposed to what we thought was 8 minutes and 46 seconds, which is now 9 minutes and 29 seconds, right? So I'm interested to see how that, carving down the time in that way will affect the jury.
So what I saw is a defense coming back and playing on a reasonable person. And I think how the defense argued is what a reasonable person in Derek Chauvin's position. Reasonable person, reasonable doubt. What is reasonable force, including, the escalation and crowd control. I mean, so he kind of intertwined that with, what is really reasonable, what's reasonable, right?
Right.
And I think with the pandering, I think you want to be very careful. I think the flatness is a strategy because but by both the prosecution and defense, because you don't want to alienate your panel, your jury.
Right.
So I could see that as being very strategic.
Okay.
But
yeah.
I can also say, and I will continue to say, that if I was to defend, sympathy is not evidence. And I would continue to, horn on that sympathy is not evidence, people.
Right. I think they may save that for the summation, right? Because they don't, maybe they don't want, what you don't want to do is make the jury think that they should be so desensitized that they are not human beings, that you shouldn't feel anything, right? So you don't want to alienate them in that way either. What I didn't think he did well is, and you all know I'm a former prosecutor. I was a prosecutor in Manhattan for 5 years. I think it's important for anybody doing an opening statement to have a theme, right? Have a theme that you come back to. And I didn't really think he used the theme well. He talked about the $20 bill and how this all started, right? With this alleged transaction that involved the $20 bill that turned out to be a counterfeit $20 bill, right? What he should have done with that is continued, like every time he talked about what Derek Chauvin did, he should have harkened back to for $20. When the car was rocking back and forth and they were getting into an altercation, this was over $20, ladies and gentlemen. I would have said that shit 50 fucking times. I would have said it. Oh, and when they came and they were trying to subdue him for 8 minutes, he was on his neck. For 9 minutes, he was on his neck for $20, ladies and gentlemen. $20, right? The penalty for passing a bad $20 bill is never death. I would have ate that opening up. I'd have ate it up because there was just so much there to eat up. But you know, I don't live in Minnesota. So. And you know what else is weird for me? I don't. Do we ever root for the prosecution? Because they usually are prosecuting people that look like us. Do we ever root for them? So I've been really conflicted in watching this trial because I'm typically rooting for the defense. I'm typically like, don't do that. This is what you should do. And this is a little sideways because I'm kind of rooting for the prosecution this time. And I learned some things today on Twitter that I'm going to share with you that really have me thinking some things. So let me talk about the defense. So Michelle, you brought up the defense tactic. And so the defense tactic, if you guys didn't see that, the defense tactic, and I hate to say that I called it. I called it last week on the Captain Hunter podcast. It was the crowd. The defense's basic theory in their opening statement is it was the crowd, right? So their argument is, one, George Floyd did what he was trained to do, right? They're going to have experts that come in and talk about, let me see, he used this term because I did take some notes today. Maximum some shit, he said. Did you hear that, Michelle? I hate when I take notes sometimes. Did you hear that, Michelle?
I didn't hear that. I didn't take that down.
I have it somewhere. So he talked about how the drugs look like Percocet, but that they were in fact a combination pill of Percocet and methamphetamine, which is commonly known as a speedball. They talked about the 2019 case. This is the defense opening. The 2019 case in which George Floyd ingested the same type of drug, a pill that looks like Percocet, which turned out to be fentanyl and methamphetamine, and he had to be taken to the hospital because he was having an adverse response. He had an elevated heart rate, he had elevated blood pressure, and they said he basically was on the verge of a stroke and or a heart attack at that time. At that time, 2019, all right? And so that came in in the opening. That is going to come into evidence. When the defense puts their case on, they plan on introducing that 2019 video of George Floyd, and it's eerily similar in behavior as the 2020 video. They talk about what was really important was they talked about the different times in the defense. You didn't hear this in the prosecution. The defense made a big deal about the time at which Derek Chauvin arrived on the scene, the time that the first EMS call was made, which was Derek Chauvin arrived at 8:17. The first EMS call was approximately, I want to say 8:20. I'm going to write that down. And I think he was gone from the scene by at least 8:29 or so. His time of death, according to the autopsy report, is 9:25. 9:25. So what does that say? That says to me that he didn't die on the scene. He didn't die on the scene, right? So it might be a little dramatic to argue that we watched the life of George Floyd leave his body, right? Because that can be countered by the autopsy, by the medical science, that he had not passed or transitioned at that time. Whether or not he lost consciousness is another story, right? Because that might be the argument to make, that he lost consciousness, but not that, in fact, he died when you actually have the autopsy with the time of death. There were life-saving treatments given when he reached, I believe, it's Hennepin County Hospital. Y'all don't bang me for that. But by the time he reached the hospital, they did treat him. They did treat him, but he could not be saved, right? So I found it. It's called the maximal restraint technique. Maximal restraint technique. Now, there is, I didn't put this up. Oh, damn, on it. The screenshot that I have of the training manual, which is a training manual that defense is going to argue is what taught Derek Chauvin the maximum restraint technique, and they're going to have experts come in and testify about that, right? Which basically says after a person is handcuffed and you suspect that they may be in medical distress, that you put them in a certain position on their side and you put your knee on their neck. It's a photograph of police officers demonstrating this, and you see a police officer with his knee on the neck of the person in the video, in the photo, when they're trying to demonstrate this this technique. So they're going to say he was doing his job. That's what he was taught. You can't fault him for doing what he was taught. Why the fuck is this case still relevant? Okay, I'm gonna hide that. Okay. So what else did the defense do? When it came to explaining why Derek Chauvin was on his neck for an entire 9 minutes and 29 seconds, he blamed the crowd. He blamed the crowd. What he basically...
That's where he lost me. And I think that's where he lost the jury.
Nope.
Nope. That's where he lost it.
Nope. I'm going to tell you why. Because just today, Wolf Blitzer on CNN said, you know, the defense argued that the crowd was distracting. I think that's a great argument. I retweeted it on Twitter. I was like, word. Because that's the problem that many people have, is that we don't take into account that other people see this shit differently. We don't. And you know, you've had those experiences. You've been to a movie with a person, and you were like, that shit was garbage, and they're like, that was the best movie ever. You're like, did we see the same fucking movie? Did we? Or a TV show, or a program, whatever it is, or a dish, or a meal. If you can relate that to anything that has happened in life in which you have had to share an experience with someone else, and they reacted differently. And you could be like, how could you not like this? Or how could you not see it my way? But again, you've got Rodney King, you've got Eric Gardner, you've got Tamir Rice. You've got, how many videos do we need to have where we saw it one way and a whole lot of people saw it a different way? Right? And that we've got to accept that. We don't have to like it. I'm not saying you got to like it, but you have to accept that. Right? And you got, this is CNN. This is a major outlet giving credence to the theory that the crowd so distracted Derek Chauvin at that point and the rest of the officers that they no longer were able to pay attention to George Floyd in any meaningful way. Now, he compounded that, right? Because that wasn't the only way he blamed the crowd. Because you got to, like Joe Madison say, you got to listen with your third ear. I'll be listening with my third ear, Joe. So it came back around on the blame the crowd. He said when the EMS got there, the crowd was so hostile that they could not give George Floyd life-saving treatment on the spot. So it's not Derek Chauvin's fault. It is the crowd's fault. Because at that point, they distracted the police officers from the job that they were doing. And they complicated the EMS ability to treat him at the scene. Yeah, what y'all think about that?
And I'm going to say to you, looking at that video, I saw no aggression by the crowd. Number one, I saw no one trying to interfere. Number two. Number three, I saw no one being so disrupted that you could not, provide some type of medical assistance to this man who lay there dying.
Yeah, and I think that they're going to have testimony that he knows CPR. Derek Chauvin is one of the trained officers who knows CPR, and he just elected not to provide it.
So let's ask Art what he thinks.
What's up, Art?
Oh well.
Okay, all right, go on. He didn't want to talk to us. That's fine. All right, let me get to this because I got some comments on here and I want to speak to some of the things that you guys are saying. So you say the outcome will depend on jury selection. Hell yeah. But I saw a comment on here, the crowd, because the trained officer to kill a man with his foot on his throat. Okay, let's talk about that for a second because this trial is going to come down to causation, right? I don't care how mad you are or how offended you are. The prosecution has to prove that the knee on the neck caused the death. It has to prove that that's the reason he died, right? The knee on the neck. So the defense, of course, is going to speak to that, and they did, and they spoke to it very powerfully because the prosecution is not calling certain witnesses to refute this testimony and this evidence that's going to come in. The defense said the medical examiner and the autopsy report shows that there are no signs of asphyxiation, right? No signs. You know how to check asphyxiation, but not just by if you have any bruising or whatnot on your neck and things of that nature, but they look at your eyes and your pupils to see how they are dilated and things of that nature. No evidence of asphyxiation. Y'all with me? No evidence. No evidence of hemorrhaging. This is what he said on the defense opening statement. No evidence of hemorrhaging. Okay. What else is said? No evidence of airway restriction. No evidence of airway restriction. That's not it. That's not all. No evidence of positional asphyxiation, right? That's if you are in a certain position that causes you to be unable to breathe. There's no evidence of positional asphyxiation. There is no evidence of mechanical asphyxiation, like somebody jumped you. It's mechanical, right? I got act up sometimes. No evidence of mechanical asphyxiation. Okay, so I say to you, how do you prove that having that knee on the neck for any length of time caused the death if there is no evidence of it? Now, here's what I learned today on Twitter, right? So every now and then I'm on the Law Crime Network, Awesome Network on YouTube. I've got a video over there as well. And I was tweeting back and forth with Linda Kenny Bodden. Now, you guys might remember the last name Bodden. Her husband is Dr. Bodden. He is world-renowned, world-renowned for his expertise in autopsies. And the George Floyd family had them review the autopsy, or had a second autopsy, in which they did a press conference back in May. I was not aware of this, but Linda put me up on game, and this is why I love having the right people. She said that her husband and another doctor who conducted that second autopsy or reviewed the autopsy did find evidence of hemorrhaging in the neck. Now, on the defense opening statement, they were so adamant that there was no evidence of hemorrhaging in the neck that they said that there was no bruising on the outside of George Floyd's neck. And they said, and as horrible as this sounds, they said even when they pulled back the skin during the autopsy, there was no bruising internally. There was no bruising outside. There was no bruising inside, right? The thing is that the prosecution is not calling Dr. Bodden or the other doctor who found evidence of hemorrhaging. So you know what that means? That means the jury is not going to hear that evidence. They're not going to hear that. What they're going to hear is there were no signs of asphyxiation, no hemorrhaging, no evidence of airway restriction, no positional asphyxiation, no mechanical asphyxiation, no bruising on the outside of the neck, no bruising when they pulled the skin back to the muscles. He said back to the muscles. I mean, I was like, oh God, I wouldn't have said that. That's just, it's a horrible graphic. I don't. He could have just said there was no bruising on the outside, and when the autopsy was conducted, there was no bruising on the inside. He didn't have to give the visual. That was dumb. That was dumb. he did also mention all of the other things that George Floyd was suffering from. He had the fentanyl and the methamphetamine in his system. He had edema of the lungs. He had a tumor. He had heart disease. He had complications from COVID, right? They threw that in there in the autopsy report. And so the defense's position is the cause of death is the combination of drug abuse and poor health. Has nothing to do with Derek Chauvin's knee. And that is supported by the science. The science. A jury can't ignore science. A jury can't throw out the autopsy. A jury can't say, well, it had to be the knee. Had to be the knee. I mean, I guess they can if they want to do jury nullification, and that's in the, we're going to just ignore whatever the judge said. We're going to ignore whatever the evidence was, and we just want to find him guilty because that's the right thing to do. That doesn't happen often. That doesn't happen often. And having listened to some of this jury selection, that is not going to happen here. Okay? Because some of these jurors are very opinionated. And one juror, I recall, I believe she's an alternate. This one juror had said, when asked about whether or not she believed George Floyd could still breathe when he was saying, "I can't breathe," she said, under no uncertain terms, if he can speak, he can breathe. Yeah, that's juror. I think she might be juror number 1. Lord knows we better not lose a juror. Goddamn. We better not lose a juror. The more you talk, the weaker the case seems. I'm sorry. Yarmimus. I want people to be aware of what's really happening in the room. The optics are one thing, because you've got a bunch of people tweeting in emotion and in anger and frustration and sadness. I get it. I'm with them. But I'm also, I got to look at this like an attorney. I got to look at analytically. I have to pull the emotion out of it. And I have to look at what these jurors are going to have when they go back in the room. And they're not going to be privy to all that you and I are privy to. And they are going to be set with they're going to be given a confined set of instructions that say, did the state prove these elements? And all they have to do is check these boxes. If the state proved all of the elements, then Derek Chauvin is guilty. If the state does not prove just one element, just one. See, the state got to prove them all. If the defense can just throw doubt on one element, not even the whole charge, just one element, you must vote not guilty. It's not even a question. That's what the law requires. So you got to get out your feelings. That's what the law requires. And that's what the judge will tell them. The law requires you find him not guilty if the state hasn't proven beyond a reasonable doubt causation. It could have been his knee. That's not the standard in a criminal case. It could be that the knee caused his death. No, it must be proven beyond a reason for you to doubt it. And the medical records give you a reason to doubt, because there's no evidence consistent with that knee having contributed to his death. Not in not with what the evidence that they have, not the evidence that has been previewed today. You didn't hear them say we're going to have an expert that's going to link up the knee and show you how the knee caused the death, because they don't have it. Because they don't have that. They don't have that. Why they don't have it is another thing. Like, why are they not using experts who could give them what they need? I don't know. Are they throwing the case?
Just like they threw the Chauvin case.
I was waiting for you to say that. I knew you. And that's why I said it, because I knew you was gonna say that. So Michelle said the prosecution threw the Chauvin case.
Yes.
Yes. Speak on it, sis. Speak on it.
Yes, they did. I mean, the defense tore their witnesses up. They weren't prepared. The witnesses came across incredible, and the defense just, created so much reasonable doubt.
Yep. And so we see, at least, so we saw 3 witnesses today. The second witness was ill prepared. Definitely ill prepared. And I just hope that we don't see more of that, because that would be too much akin to the Sean Bell trial. And I actually covered the Sean Bell trial for Court TV back in the day. I did a commentary on that trial, and I actually, this is an interesting case because the Sean Bell trial, it was personal to me for a lot of reasons, right? Let me just go there for a second. I'm a former prosecutor. I work with those cops. I knew them. I knew them personally, like friend. Like we hang out. Like I'm gonna go to their house for the barbecue, the cookout, right? That. I knew the defense attorneys. One of them I consider a mentor, Tony Rico, right? And so I would watch the trial, and it was tough. It was tough. It was tough. But I agree with you, Michelle. Having tried cases in Queens against the Queens prosecutors, yeah, it is my opinion. Let me say that for they be on me that they did throw that case, and so I would not be surprised if some of that is happening in this case. I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, so let's talk about that last witness that we had on, Mr. Williams. What's his name? Did y'all see him?
It was straight up bolstering.
Listen,
yo, I'm trying to see. Are you trying to establish him as the expert? Because he clearly isn't.
So they had pretrial. They had some pretrial argument about this. And so there was, from what I understand, and I didn't see the pretrial argument, so I can't really speak to what the entire ruling was, but it was some argument back and forth, and the judge is allowing him to give some testimony about his experience as a martial artist and what he knows about the different types of holds, right? So he can explain what he was processing as he was witnessing, what was happening with George Floyd. But I think it went a little too far today, which is why we had the objections and the breaks, because the judge is allowing him to say certain things, but he started to say things like what George Floyd was thinking at the time. That's objectionable, right? And so let me just be clear for those of you who don't understand. When you are testifying at a trial as a layperson, you can only testify about what you have personal knowledge of. Right? What you saw, what you heard, what you felt, that's it. You can't talk about your opinion on a thing, right? That type of testimony is reserved to experts, right? And an expert has to be qualified as such. You don't just walk in and self-name, I'm here, I'd like to testify, I'm expert, Keith. That's not how it works. You have to be qualified to be an expert. We have to go through your training and your experience and whether you've testified before, whether you've been an expert before, right? And we get that out, and you are then deemed an expert in that particular field for which you are then allowed to give your expert opinion. Let me give you an example. They do it with chemists, right? A chemist may come in, she's not a fact witness, she didn't see you with any drugs, she didn't know where the drugs came from, but she works in a lab. And she got a package with some white stuff, and it's her job to test the white stuff to see if it contained a controlled substance, right? And so she does that. She's going to come to trial. She's going to give her whole background. I got a bachelor's in forensic this and that, and science and that and that. Then I got this job, and I was training, and I took this class and that class, and I've been doing this job for 5 years, and I've been an expert. I've been deemed an expert over in Manhattan and in Brooklyn and over in federal court too, Judge. And then Judge goes, okay, you're an expert. Right? Then she says, so I got this white shit and I tested this shit, and guess what, y'all? It was fucking cocaine. And then the witness said, the prosecutor who put this witness on will say, can you tell us to a scientific degree of expert certainty whether or not that white substance was in fact a controlled substance? And she can say, I can tell you with a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, it's my opinion, with a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that in fact was cocaine. All right, so that's how that goes. So this guy is a layperson who just happened to be walking. I forgot where he said he was going at the time, and he stops and he starts watching this this interaction with George Floyd and the police officers. And so they call him to recount what he's saying. But his testimony has to be limited to what he's seeing and what he knows about chokehold. He cannot offer what is in the mind of anyone else, right? And so that's why you saw objection, sidebar, put the headphones on, judge, this is bullshit, turn on the white noise in the courtroom because you know, right? And so that's where we kind of left off. He was trying to suggest that George Floyd was saying and or thinking or feeling, which is not permissible, right? That's not permissible. And so that's what some of the conversation was with the judge telling him, listen, you can say this, but you can't say that. You can say this, but you can't. You could do this, but you can't do that. You could, okay. All right, let me look in here and see what kind of questions we got. Any
that testimony?
Which one? What test?
Destroyed the last witness.
No,
that was so I would have that testimony is never. That's not coming in.
Yeah, I don't know how it got in either. I was sitting here going, huh? What? I would be on top of the table. Objection, judge. I said objection. There's some bullshit. But they had a pretrial ruling, right? So they had a pretrial ruling because typically this would not be admissible. They had a pretrial, meaning an advance ruling as to the scope of his testimony, right? And so the objection, right? So the objection came when he went beyond the scope of that testimony. Yeah. All right, let me see some questions in the comments. Jury makeup, 14, 2 multiracial, non-white people. I think there are 4 black people and a white chick that was excited when she got the jury numbers. Yeah, I don't never want an excited juror. You can carry your ass back home. Fuck that. Landmark, where you been at, Miss Ike? I've been here. I just haven't been on YouTube. I've been trying to build up Instagram and Twitter. I think I have like 500 followers on Twitter. I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to work on the social media to get some of this stuff going. But I'm also, a college professor, and I'm off this week because of spring break. So I got a little bit more time. I'm also a mom. I'm also taking care of my mom. So I got a lot of things going on. But follow me on Instagram. Follow me. Somebody want to get in touch with me. Follow me. Touch me. Email me or inbox me on Instagram. So Instagram is Ike Speaks. Twitter is Ike Speaks. YouTube is Ike Speaks. My Gmail is ikespeaks@gmail.com. Okay. They couldn't get an indictment for Eric Garner. That's right. Y'all missing. They had the video. They couldn't even get an indictment. You can't even get to trial. And you had a video because people see different things, right? People see different things. All right. What happened that BP trial that was supposed to be in the works? Brother, I knew somebody was going to bring up Brother Polite because I can't never do a live without Brother Polite. First of all, someone contacted me, I want to say a month or 2 ago, and he had sent Brother Polite $300. And I was like, how are people still sending this man money? As far as I have been informed by federal authorities, Brother Polite is under investigation. And that's all I can say about that. And that motherfucker knows he's under investigation. And so you all know, investigations take years. And I know because I defend people who are arrested after the investigation comes down. And I'll be like, God damn, this shit started in 2015. Right? So investigations take time. I personally have sent evidence to the government regarding the fraudulent activities of Brother Polite. And I have no qualms about that. And if you want to call me a snitch, I'll wear that hat proudly like a motherfucker. Trust and believe. I don't really care about what people say about me any goddamn way. Y'all should know that by now. The lawyer have to agree on the jury. There should be some color in that city. They got 4 jurors, Yamas. They got 4 jurors. Even if he's acquitted, though, the feds could still go after him. Yeah, they could, but did they go after the they didn't go after Tamir Rice's killer. They let that statute of limitation they let that clock run right on out. They didn't go after Eric Garner killer. They let that statute of limitation run right out. They gave a sweetheart deal to Walter Scott's killer. I think he got you know, probation or some bullshit. I don't even know if he got jail time. So even though we have a new administration, I don't have any faith in them. I don't have any faith. I just don't. I don't have faith in fake Biden and please Kamala who. No. I mean I just don't. I already gave the update on that. Can you do the same on Umar? I'm not gonna be the conscious community police person. I'm not about to be that person. Um, I only got involved in that matter because I was on that platform, and I like to be responsible for anyone that I may have been or currently am associated with. And because I associated myself with him, I didn't want anyone to think that that was a license to send that man money. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear. Once I did that, that just opened up the floodgates. And I mean, it was insane. It was insane for that time period where I was receiving, and it was heartbreaking. I'll do an update video on that. But let's stick to George Floyd today. Let's stick to George Floyd. Amber Geiger's up for appeal. Well, you know what? They better deny her appeal just like they denied Muhammad Noor's appeal, right? Muhammad Noor is the police officer in Minnesota who was convicted of third-degree murder for killing the white woman. Remember, he got 12 and a half years. He was convicted of third-degree murder. That is the same charge that was reinstated for Derek Chauvin, right? That was the charge that the judge initially had thrown out. Prosecutors moved to have it reinstated, went up to appeals court. They ordered the judge, or they not ordered, but they basically said, reinstate the charge consistent with our decision, goddammit. And so he had to put the charge back in. And so the charge is there. It's there. I'll follow YT. I'll follow his YT. I don't know what that is. All right, I'm looking to see if there's any more questions because we got 9 more minutes. I jumped on at 6. I didn't want to be longer than an hour. You guys have any questions? Sure, let's hear it. Go ahead.
First of all, how you doing? Long time no talk.
Hey, Art. That's Art. I didn't know. I'm trying to do too many things. What's up, Art Garfield? Okay, let me introduce you. Art Garfield is an actor, comedian, producer, writer, and a Sagittarius from New York. I gotta read your whole profile. Chilling in Silver Spring, Maryland. Yeah, you left us and you live in New York. You can find Art was in the movie Mo Money, and Art wrote a book about Bill Cosby. I bought that book. I forgot the title. What's the title of the book?
Power Was My Mentor.
Power Was My Mentor is the book, Art. All right, weigh in, Art.
So, I watched the opening, and I really didn't have, I heard your take on the opening. Sometimes I think people in the same locations are to me like barbers. It's not a barber that likes the next barber's style of cutting the hair.
Right.
No disrespect.
That's fine.
You're a great attorney, so no disrespect.
Thank you.
Yeah, but his opening to me, because I'm a spectator, because I'm general public, regular guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did a good job because he hit that emotional. I was in shock, embarrassed, ashamed, insulted, terrified, all over again, and even more so because this time I actually watched the whole thing silently and watch that man's life leave his body. And I think that's what the effect was. And that's the opening. That's how he opened.
Yeah.
They'll never forget that. That's burned into their minds and souls because it was terrible. And then it's set up to say what you're going to hear from them is nothing to do with the fuck you're just going to see it.
Yeah.
So it's like I know as a prosecutor, attorney, yourself, there's a whole bag of tricks that these idiots will pull out
right.
to try to have other people, do a Trump. Don't believe what your eyes just saw.
Right.
You know, and
I just think that it would take a soulless person to not find fault with watching that cop, watching the casualness of the way that cop was chilling on that dude's neck. And then I mean, I heard you mention when the paramedics came and how it was said that there was so much confusion that the cops weren't able to give medical attention, or the paramedics, they were casual too. They treated him as if he was dead. When they pulled up, they checked his pulse. Homeboy didn't get up. They checked his pulse. And this guy's going. Everything was smooth. Everything was, there was no urgency whatsoever concerning this man's life. And I think all that's going to, hopefully, if they keep reiterating all those different points, those real points that everybody saw, this case should be a no-brainer. But I know there's a bag of tricks that they're gonna try and pull out and just totally insult, this case. That's all I gotta say. I got more to say, but that's all I gotta say.
I mean, I appreciate you, and I just, my thing is, and why I do these is because I want to give you the perspective is how we hear it outside of the courtroom is not how it's heard inside the courtroom. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, yeah, it's received differently. And again, it comes down to the elements. It comes down to whether or not the prosecution has established the elements. Fuck your feelings. You know what I'm saying? That unfortunately, that's the truth. And so he's charged with 3 separate counts. Let me see. I thought I had one of them. Second-degree murder, unintentional while committing a felony. That's the most serious charge, in which they have to establish that he was assaulting George Floyd at the time of his death. They're never going to get that. They're not going to get that. Not going to happen. Okay? Because you have to prove intent. You have to prove intent to assault. I'm intent. I don't think they're going to get a jury to believe that a police officer, in the course of his job, just decided to intend to assault someone. I don't see that happening.
Well, isn't there some backstory that they worked together at one time?
That's not right. And so again, right, that's not coming into evidence. You didn't hear any mention of any past relationship where they knew each other that could have informed the behavior of Derek Chauvin.
Why is that? How did I get that?
Because I don't know that that's ever been established anywhere, right? That's what something, that was like a media speculation type of thing. I don't.
Okay.
And so that's another thing. It's like, we're running around with what we heard. The jury's not going to hear what we thought we heard or what we think the evidence is. They're going to get what the evidence really is, right? And so the third-degree murder is the most likely count that they could find, because that requires that the person that Derek Chauvin was perpetrating an eminently dangerous act and evincing a depraved mind, right? And so the argument is putting your knee on someone's neck for that length of time is eminently dangerous, right? And for you to do it without any regard is evidence of a depraved mind, okay? A depraved mind. And so that is the count that he very likely will, if there is any conviction, he will be found guilty of. I don't know where I put the other count. There's another count. I think it's manslaughter. And that's still, again, going to come down to whether or not he caused the death of George Floyd. And again, so causation is going to be the thing. So we'll see. I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to the medical examiners, the medical experts, and the experts on the use of force, because I think that's what it's going to come down to. And whether those experts, whether the defense can get those experts to concede on cross-examination that this maximum restraint technique is a technique that is taught by the officers in Minnesota and that they are allowed to use it. If that's the case, he's allowed to use it. So he was not doing something that's outside of his training. Now, the prosecution the prosecution rebutted that by saying that was not the training. So we'll see how that evidence comes in with the experts and whether or not the defense is going to be able to get that concession.
That's a terrible precedent. If this allows to go through, it's like, all right, hey, listen, next are open season.
Right. Well, listen, they have always been open season. The chokehold wasn't an issue until Eric Garner, right? And that's the essence of tort law reform. Tort law reform being that we're not going to change things until you sue us about it, right? So if you think about, how playgrounds used to be back in the 80s and when we was kids, you bust your head open on some goddamn cement. Then they put those black mats in the parks, right? Because too many kids was falling. And then those black mats got too hot and kids started getting burned. Then they started suing, so I had to change that shit, right? That's tort law reform. Exactly, right? You don't have a stop sign on your block. You ain't getting one until somebody get hit by a car and die. That's when they're going to say, oh, we need a stop sign here, right? There's just never any proactive shit. That's just how our country is. It's fucked up that way. Folks got to die before shit changes. Yeah. All right, family. I think we beat this to death for a good minute. We are approaching an hour. Anybody else in the room want to say anything on Clubhouse? Any comments that I missed? Do you think so? Do you think his co-workers will testify against him? Stephanie Coleman, that is an excellent question. And you know why they're not going to testify? Because they're co-defendants. And this is where the prosecution fucked up. Why are you charging all of them? Stupid ass. Now, I recall, and I haven't seen this and no one said it at trial yet, but I recall that there was one police officer who did the tap tap like, yo, get up. Like, he might be kind of messed up. Like that. I haven't heard any evidence about that. Right. But if I'm the prosecutor, I'm putting you on the stand. I'm not charging you. I'm going to put you on the stand. And then I'm going to ask you to tell me what you saw, because I need to establish for these jurors that what Derek Chauvin was doing was not reasonable for an officer. So if I could get you on the stand to say, I saw that he was in distress, then I can impute that to Derek Chauvin. Because if you saw that as an officer, as a trained officer, he fucking saw it too. Right? Because there's a fellow officer rule. Right here in New York, police officers are allowed to act on what other police officers see and do. So if I see you commit a crime, I could radio up to the police and be like, yo, get this bitch because she just X, Y, and Z, right? And that officer then is imputed with the probable cause that the officer who observed the shit. So what's the difference? Why can't we flip that on his head? See, that's the shit that I'm talking about. You got to be creative with the evidence that you have. You can't just... I ain't telling them how to try their fucking case. They stupid. That's all I'm going to say. Well, that's my response to that, Ms. Coleman, because if I would not be charging all of those officers, I actually would have at least that officer come in and testify. And he doesn't have to tell me anything about what was in Derek Chauvin's head. I'm going to make that argument in summation. I just need him to tell me what was in his head. And you tapped him because I see you tap him on the video. And what did you say at that time? Were you aware that George Floyd was in distress at that moment? Yes, because the prosecution is talking about how when police officers are engaging, it is a moment by moment evaluation. So maybe in the beginning, they thought it was necessary to keep him down and assume in the maximum restraint. But at some time subsequent to that, at least one officer thought that was not necessary. Okay, so you need that evidence. Why the fuck you not putting that in? Why? I don't know. Maybe they'll watch this video tonight and amend their fucking witness list and their whole goddamn strategy. Because every time I wake up, I'll be like, oh, they doing that shit? That's stupid.
This is how I see it. If there is a acquittal, they're going to dismiss all the cases against the other officers.
Absolutely.
Because you're not going to be able to win the conviction. In other cases. That's number one.
Right.
And number two, if you're not calling those experts in regards to the strangulation or asphyxiation, that's problematic for me.
Right.
You're throwing this case.
That's what I'm saying. Right. So Almond Joy had a comment. I saw it. Where is it? Where did it go? Where did your comment go? I saw it. Okay, I got the co-workers. Once his body was lifeless, he was in the EMS came after that. When he get off his, why he didn't get up off his neck? Because that's what he was trained to do until the EMS comes. You can see it in his eyes. He was enjoying it. Yeah, you can't make that argument. I agree he was the devil too, but you can't make that argument. You know, I saw. Oh, the dispatcher. Oh, I'm enjoying the dispatcher. Yes, the dispatcher told on those officers. Right. So I think she was the first witness that came on, who was the dispatcher, who was dispatch. She's a police dispatcher, and they have televisions. Right? Did you see that shit? She was like, yeah. So I was watching. She's like, yeah, I had to make a call. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but basically her testimony came down to, I was, receiving calls about this, and we had it up on the screen, and I was watching what was going on. And at one point, I thought that the screen froze because that's how long he had been on the ground. And it turned out the screen hadn't froze because I then saw somebody move. And she's like, something's not right. She couldn't say what it was, but she was like, something not right in my spirit. You know how we be, right? Something not right. And if say something was a person, it's this woman, because she picked up the phone and she called a sergeant. She called a supervisor, and she said, listen, something's going on over there. I don't know what's happening. It don't look right. But as she's on the phone with the sergeant, she's talking back to the other people in the room, and they're telling her, oh, they just put him in the ambulance. Right. So she's telling the sergeant, all right, they're removed from the scene, but I don't know what was happening. I just wanted to let you know it didn't look right. She couldn't really articulate. She's not an expert. Right. She's a police dispatcher, and all she could say is what I saw didn't look right. Does that amount to a guilty verdict? No. That alone, not alone, it won't. But I thought it was interesting. And I was happy that there's someone, in that type of position that is unafraid to say something when you see something, right? Because sometimes fear is paralyzing, and that's what the defense is going to go with. Fear is paralyzing. Ha. You like that? Yeah, that's what they're going with. In the crowd, they were afraid, and given the climate, the political climate of police officers right now, they going to say that they were justified in feeling that way, right? Can you touch on him trying to give his wife everything in a divorce and the judge saying no? I don't know anything about that. I did not follow his civil antics, problems, issues. I could guess that he wanted to divest himself of anything. Should he get convicted, so that I'm assuming they have kids, so that their kids could have, and then if there's any type of liability that the family might bring against him, if he is not doesn't fall under qualified immunity, and he won't have any money to pay them. I don't think that they would do a separate wrongful death action. Right now, the $27 million will be paid by the municipality. So I'm not really sure. But sometimes people divest themselves of their property when they either expect to be sued, right? Or maybe he expects to go to prison. Could be one or the other. Dude gonna walk George Floyd, ate his speedball. Case closed. Now go burn down the AutoZone. Roto-Rooter. The funny thing is, I was thinking that maybe a not guilty verdict is the thing that further highlights how broken the system is, right? And then if the verdict is guilty, are you going to have some false sense of security that the system works now? Because it doesn't. Even if he's found guilty, the system still doesn't work, right? So, yeah, I mean, there's going to be a juror, Roto-Rooter. There's going to be a juror who feels just like that. There's going to be at least one juror who is like, he ate fentanyl. You know what? All they know about fentanyl is what they hear on the news. Like, if you get a little of that shit on a piece of paper and it's on your hands, you could overdose and die. Right? You've heard about the opioid crisis, and that's what people know, how dangerous that kind of drug is. You combined that shit, and you had cannabinoids in your system. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Somebody's gonna feel like that though. Like, we may not like the opinions of other people that are not aligned with ours, but there are going to be people that think differently than us. There are going to be people in that room who goes, he ate drugs. Of course he died. He had an overdose. Look at the toxicology report. Look at everything that was in his system. Look at how much was in his system, right? And the partially eaten pills. There were pills that were found in the back of the car that had his DNA on. He didn't get to ingest those. Oh, good, Mona. I'm happy to hear that. I'm glad you won, even if you had to pay. Oh, if you had to speak for yourself, sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes nobody can tell your story better than you can, right? And that includes lawyers. Sometimes, nobody can tell your story better than you. So, did we catch everything else? Let me see. Would be good to require special prosecutions for this case. There are many places that require special prosecutions for police-involved shooting cases. And I believe this one is, isn't it Ellison, who is the first Black Attorney General in Minnesota? I believe he is prosecuting this case. Now, he is not in the courtroom himself, right? He's the Attorney General, so he has assistant Attorney Generals in the courtroom prosecuting the case on his behalf. So, yeah. I hope that answered your question about that. Anytime prosecutors prosecute police officers, it's a major conflict, whether it's a special prosecutor or not. There's still going to be a conflict of interest because police officers feel, they should not be prosecuted by prosecutors that they work with, which is why special prosecutions help, but it's still a conflict of interest. Once the family received the civil case for $27 million, I knew that was code for they getting off. Yeah, a lot of people feel like that too. They actually lost 2 jurors as a result of the civil settlement. 2 jurors who said that they could no longer be fair. Didn't say which way, but I'm assuming that they were gleaning guilt from the fact that the city paid the family and said that they could no longer be fair. I really hope that helps convicting. I hope he gets convicted too. I really do. Because we cannot have police officers thinking that behavior is acceptable, because it's not. It's not. All right, I'm about done. Michelle, you got anything you want to add on here, Mama?
No, I'm done.
You done too? All right.
This was good.
This was good. Yeah, I think we covered a lot of stuff. I think I went through the chat over here on YouTube as best I could. And all right, we're gonna be recapping. I can't promise I'm gonna recap every night, but we will be recapping throughout the course of this trial. Okay.
We're going to
We
try.
gonna do better than try. We gonna recap. We gonna be here. We out here. Y'all know I'm watching. Thank you all for joining me tonight. I really appreciate you. I am going to be back on YouTube more often. I will be posting videos. I uploaded a video yesterday if you haven't checked that out. The prosecutor, I know he watched my video on cause and manner of death because he said my shit verbatim. And I posted that today on Twitter. I was like, somebody been watching my video. I know I might be a little self-absorbed, but fuck that. Like, how you saying exactly what I said? Like, for real. But check that video out. Thank you for joining me tonight. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Huh?
What did he say? What did you say? And he repeated it.
Oh, about the medical examiner's finding that the cause of death was a homicide. And then he went into the whole, now, the finding of a homicide is not what you think it is, right? And that's literally what I say in that video. And most people think that when someone is, when it's classified a homicide, that means that someone will be held responsible. And he went through that. He's like, that's not what it means. It only means that you died at the hands of another. Then he went into all the different manners of death: accidental, suicide, unknown or undetermined, or there's one natural, right? So there's only 5. There's only 5 manners of death, right? Homicide, you killed yourself, right? Homicide, somebody killed you. Suicide, you killed yourself. Accident, you took too many pills and you mixed it with alcohol. Undetermined, we don't know how the fuck you died. Natural causes, you was an old son of a bitch, right? So those are the 5 manners of death, but that doesn't have anything to do with the cause of death, right? So cause of death is something different because you could die by homicide, meaning you died at the hands of another, but they could have shot you. That's the cause of death. Or they could have stabbed you, or they could have hung you, right? Those are the different types of causes of death, right? They're you know, the list is inexhaustible, right? And so the same is true for all the other manners of death, right? Accidental, you could have drowned in a pool, right? Maybe you didn't mix your pills in your liquor, you drowned in a pool, or you slipped off a cliff, right? So I know sometimes my examples are terrible, but that's the life of a defense attorney, right? All we see is terrible shit. So even when I'm teaching and I'm trying to give examples, it's always like, and somebody fell off of a ride and severed their head. My class is like, come on, Professor, why? Like, because that really happened. Anyway. All right, family. I'm out of here. Thank you, Mona, for reminding. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to get my life together so I can get y'all some more information. I appreciate y'all for being here. Thank you so much. Y'all stay safe out here in these COVID streets. And I'm see y'all around. It's your girl Ike. I love you. I really do.
Thanks, Ike. Thanks, Michelle.
All right. Good talking to you, sweetheart. Take care. All right. Peace, family.
Later.
Bye, mama.